I scanned the old airline ticket they gave me as a joke, and the screen blinked. Congratulations, jackpot winner. $200 million, no one knew. Not even the sister they gave a beachfront villa while handing me that gift, like I should be grateful for crumbs. Hi, I'm Jenna. And for years, I was the invisible daughter, the quiet one. Until silence became my sharpest tool, they built their world on my stillness. And they never saw what was coming. Before we jump into the story, if you don't mind, let me know where you're from by leaving a comment below. That way, I can send a special hello your way. Now go ahead, grab yourself a warm cup of water and find a comfy spot. It's time to begin the story. I arrived late on purpose. Not late enough to make a statement, just enough to avoid the pre-party family photos and small talk about who had aged well since Grandma's funeral. Charleston's spring air was soft that day, the kind that could trick you into thinking everything was new again. But as I stepped through the garden gate, pastel balloons bobbing beside me, I knew better. Nothing had changed. Not really. The backyard had been transformed. Round tables draped in linen, white chairs lined in rows facing a banner that read, "She Did It," in gold script. The smell of mac and cheese, glazed ham, and sweet tea drifted across the lawn. Jazz hummed from a Bluetooth speaker near the champagne bar. I spotted a cousin I hadn't seen in a decade and nodded politely. She squinted like she was trying to place me. Corinne, my mother, was the first to acknowledge me, if you could call it that. She glided over in a beige sheath dress, pearls tight around her neck, her heels clicking against the flagstone path. She pressed a quick, dry kiss to my cheek and murmured, "We're glad you made it," before turning to wave at someone else mid-sentence. I stood still for a moment, half smiling at her shoulder. Elaine, of course, was glowing. A blush-pink designer dress hugged her frame just enough to be elegant, not desperate. Her hair fell in soft waves, makeup perfectly airbrushed. She laughed with a group of women in coral and gold, hand resting lightly on a champagne flute, like she belonged in a magazine spread about young women who make everything look effortless. I found a corner spot beside the buffet, hoping the smell of peach cobbler would give me something to focus on. No one approached. A few nodded in that way people do when they aren't sure if they should remember your name. Then came the moment that snapped everything into place. Dad stood up near the string lights, raised his glass, and tapped a spoon against it. "Can I have everyone's attention, just for a moment?" he said, his voice smooth and proud, practiced like he'd done this before. "We are here to celebrate a young woman who embodies grace, grit, and vision." The crowd murmured its approval. "Our Elaine," he continued, beaming toward her, "who not only earned her real estate license in record time, but did so while mentoring younger agents, building her brand and being a light in our lives, and to help her start this next chapter." He paused, glanced at Corinne, then signaled to a man in a navy blazer standing by the drinks table. The man stepped forward, handing over a decorative envelope. Russell held it high. "Elaine, your mother and I are giving you the villa in Hilton Head. It's yours, sweetheart." There was a beat of silence before the crowd erupted in applause. Someone even whistled. Champagne glasses clinked. Elaine pressed her hands to her chest, then covered her mouth in mock surprise. "Oh my God," she gasped, looking around. "You're kidding." Her eyes sparkled. They weren't. I felt the corners of my mouth lift, instinctively polite, even as my stomach dropped. I remembered that villa. We'd vacationed there once when I was 10. I'd been told not to sit on the white leather couch, not to touch the seashell sculptures on the mantel. Elaine had been allowed to pick her room. I slept on the couch. Then Corinne turned toward me. "And of course," she said with a too-sweet smile, "we didn't forget our Jenna." I didn't move. She rummaged through her handbag and pulled out a plain white envelope, creased, no seal. She handed it to me with a pat on the hand. "We thought this might inspire your next creative project," she said. I opened it slowly. Inside was a rejected airline ticket, dated 3 months ago. No message, no explanation. Corinne chuckled. "It got returned, but you always liked quiet places. Maybe this is a sign to go find one. There was a polite ripple of laughter from those who were close enough to hear. No one made eye contact. Someone passed me a glass of sweet tea. I nodded silently. I made my way to the downstairs bathroom and shut the door behind me. The mirror above the sink showed exactly what I expected. Lipstick faded at the corners. My eyes ringed with exhaustion I hadn't noticed until now. I leaned on the counter and just stood there, not crying, not raging, just there. It's funny how silence can hum louder than applause. I didn't stay long after that. I drifted to the side yard and watched the sun start to dip. The laughter, the stories, the celebrations, they all swirled around Elaine like ribbons. I was just background noise. Again. Before heading upstairs, I passed a chair near the fireplace where someone had tossed a folded copy of the program. Curiosity tugged at me. I picked it up. Elaine's name was printed in elegant gold lettering across the top. 4 pages followed, filled with pictures from childhood, quotes from mentors, and bullet points outlining her future plans. My name wasn't mentioned once. That night, back in the guest room that used to be mine before it became a makeshift storage unit, I pulled my laptop out of its case. The air smelled faintly of old books and lavender-scented drawer liners. I hadn't opened that particular folder in years. Villa paperwork, it was labeled, buried beneath client invoices and draft manuscripts. I clicked. The PDF loaded slowly. A scanned copy of a deed. Owner, Jenna M. Walker. Dated 3 years ago. I stared at the screen for a long time, not crying, just documenting. Maybe this time I'd remember to save every file. I held the keys once, not metaphorically, literally. I remember the weight of them, silver with blue plastic covers, pressing into my palm while Dad nodded and said, "Just for now." And now, 3 years later, I was watching someone else hold the ribbon, her fingers manicured, her smile staged, while the whole family clapped like it had always been hers. The next morning, I woke up to the distant sound of lawn sprinklers and the smell of stale cinnamon from a candle Corinne must have forgotten to blow out. Light filtered through the half-closed blinds of the guest room, slicing across the cardboard boxes stacked by the closet. A few were labeled Xmas Elaine in red marker. I rolled over and opened the laptop still perched beside me. The screen lit up, prompting me to log in. I clicked through my folders like muscle memory, not thinking, just moving. When I opened Villa paperwork, my chest tightened. There it was, clear as day, the deed, dated October 2016. Owner, Jenna M. Walker. I stared at the header, the notary seal, the email string where I'd been CC'd as a temporary holder. I hadn't thought about it in a long time. Cross-legged, back against the cabinet, listening to nothing. When I was 7, Elaine got a Barbie dream house for Christmas. 3 stories, tiny working elevator, all pink and glitter. I got a jigsaw puzzle from a gas station. A quarter of the pieces were missing, and the picture on the box was a landscape of a place I didn't know. Mom said, "It's good for your mind." Dad added, "Don't make this a competition." It never was. Not really. I was never in the running. That night, I slept in jeans. I don't remember dreaming. 2 weeks later, I left Charleston. No big announcement, no note on the fridge, no cryptic Instagram quote with a skyline background. I hired a moving crew through a secure site, paid with cashier's checks from an LLC I had created with the help of a discreet advisor named Julian. Tide Nest Holdings, registered to a mailbox in Asheville, North Carolina. The house I bought was small, sunlit, with high ceilings and matte hardwood floors, white linen curtains, a deep navy couch I picked without asking anyone's opinion, the kind of place that whispered, not shouted. I didn't tell friends. I didn't tell family. The only person who knew was Julian, and even he only referred to me as Client 0219. For the first time, I had space. Space to think, to exhale, to not be watched or expected or interpreted. I worked remotely. I cooked my own meals, grilled vegetables, simple pastas, ginger tea in the evenings. I walked barefoot on the deck when it rained. I stopped checking the family group chat. I didn't leave it, though. I wanted to see what they'd say when they thought I wasn't listening. Elaine, unsurprisingly, filled the silence. A month after I moved, she launched a women's empowerment retreat, the kind with words like vision and manifestation in cursive fonts on all the headers. She posted a video tour of the Hilton Head Villa, my name nowhere in sight, of course, and invited applications for a curated weekend of healing, branding, and sisterhood. I wouldn't have looked twice if not for the website footer. Creative director and visionary sponsor, Jenna M. Walker. Below that, a photo I hadn't seen in years, taken from my old LinkedIn. I was standing near a whiteboard, mid-laugh, arms folded, a candid shot from a workshop I led once in Atlanta, cropped to make me look like I belonged in their glossy pastel world. My stomach dropped. I scrolled faster. There it was again. My name. Testimonials from fictional clients. A quote attributed to me that I never wrote. Empowerment starts when we step into our light. I closed the tab, reopened it, closed it again. I could have called, I could have emailed, but what would I even say? Please stop using me to build your empire? They'd spin it into gratitude. They always did. Corinne sent a voice memo 2 days later. "Hi, honey," she chirped. "Elaine said she added your name as a thank you. Wasn't that sweet of her? Also, when you have a sec, could you look over the wedding invite designs? We're struggling with font choices." I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I hit record and spoke softly, one sentence. "Compliments don't cost people their peace." I saved the file. Didn't send it. I didn't post anything. Didn't retaliate. But that was the moment they lost me. Not when they handed Elaine a villa or made jokes over chicken about how I wasn't the property type. Not even when they erased me from the program booklet. It was when they took my silence and made it a resource. They didn't just forget me. They used me. And for the first time, I realized I didn't owe them a single word. That evening, I walked through my new living room and turned on the salt lamp by the window. I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat cross-legged on the couch, sipping chamomile. The wind outside whispered across the glass. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was full of clarity. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed with a message request from someone I didn't recognize at first, Kent Myers. "You don't know me, but I think that house was yours first. I heard your dad talking." I set my tea down. They counted on me staying quiet. I counted on them underestimating what silence can do. It was January, and the first snow of the season had just dusted Asheville in a soft white hush. My neighborhood was quiet like a painting. The roads shimmered under a thin glaze of frost, and wind carried the cedar scent from my candle across the house. I stood by the window, espresso in hand, watching snow collect along the deck railing. The message from Kent Myers had sat unread in my inbox for 2 days. I finally opened it just after breakfast. He'd been polite, almost formal, said he wasn't sure if I remembered him from Elaine's engagement party. He was a cousin of Caleb, her fiancé, and had overheard a conversation between my father and one of Caleb's colleagues. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," he wrote, "but your dad said, and I quote, 'Too bad Jenna isn't marketable. Would have made more sense to invest in her, but she's not built for the spotlight.'" Kent continued, saying he wasn't sure if it was his place, but something about it didn't sit right. "You deserve to know," he added. I reread it 3 times. Then I opened a voice recording app I'd all but forgotten about. Scrolling back, I passed grocery lists, snippets of writing ideas, a few half-dictated emails. Then I saw one titled, "Brunch November Iki Bin on Dokus." I didn't even remember recording it. I pressed play. Silverware clinked. Chairs scraped tile. Then my mother's voice, low and clear. "Jenna's sweet, but she was never built for leadership. She's too passive. Elaine now, she understands presence." A soft laugh. Probably Elaine. Then Dad. "She still makes those little collages, right?" Mood boards. Cute. More laughter, comfortable, intimate, the kind people only share when they think they're safe. I paused the playback, set the phone down. My espresso had gone cold. I sent the file to my desktop, renamed it Proof Audio 01, and began organizing folders: legal, financial, statements, deeds. I'd never built a wall before, but this was starting to feel like laying the foundation. Not out of vengeance, but preservation. I wasn't looking to destroy anything. I just wanted to make sure they couldn't reach me again. That evening, I emailed Bernard Fox, a lawyer recommended by a local friend who described him as the kind of man who listens before he talks. His reply came the next morning, concise, professional. Let's discuss protections. I assume this is about intellectual property misuse and potential identity misrepresentation? I replied with one word, yes. While we scheduled our first call, the online chatter kept growing. Elaine had launched a podcast, Family Can Be Fuel. The logo featured a cartoon flame shaped like a heart. Episode 1 was titled, Some Support is Silent but Powerful. I listened through my earbuds while folding laundry. Elaine's voice was syrupy smooth. She spoke about legacy, about those who quietly step up without needing credit. Then she said it, my name. I'm blessed to have a sister who doesn't need the spotlight. She's been a silent investor, a creative guide. She doesn't talk about it, but I will, because women need to hear this. She hadn't asked. She hadn't warned me. She just took what wasn't hers, wrapped it in glitter, and called it gratitude. Later that week, a client I'd worked with on a long-term brand package sent a short message. Hey, Jenna, love your work, but we can't keep up with your new rates. Didn't realize you were in the angel investor space now. Congrats. I stared at the screen. My rates hadn't changed. I opened my personal design website. There, embedded in the metadata, was a backlink leading to Elaine's retreat page, my photo, my name, my quiet forcibly repurposed into her engine. That night, I drafted a cease and desist. Bernard helped clean up the language, added references to IP violation, brand misrepresentation, and potential defamation by association. I trademarked my design studio's name, registered it officially, filed it across 3 states. 2 days after the cease and desist went live, I got a text. Vera. That wasn't necessary. She meant it as a compliment. Of course she did. Compliments were their favorite tools. Soft, padded, just sharp enough to draw blood if you looked closely. I stood in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, and typed a reply slowly. My fingers didn't shake. Me. Compliments don't cost people their peace. I didn't send it yet. I read it aloud once, then again. The house was still. The snow outside hadn't melted. It had simply thickened, softened, muffled everything in its path. They controlled the narrative for so long. I was done whispering the truth. I wanted it to echo. The podcast studio was smaller than I remembered. Nina had moved it into a converted attic above a print shop in downtown Asheville. A tea kettle whistled quietly in the corner while I ran my fingers along the edge of the wooden table, warm from the morning sun filtering through the skylight. Nina adjusted the mic stand in front of me. We'll start slow, she said gently. Just you and me. When you're ready, I'll roll the clip. I nodded. We started with a conversation. Our shared days in design school, how I used to cut typography samples by hand instead of printing them. Then she shifted. So, she said softly, you've been quiet a long time. Tell me why you're here now. I took a breath. Then I told her everything. The deed, the temporary favor, the ticket, the silence they wrapped around me like wallpaper. Pretty, but meant to blend me into the background. I showed her the scanned PDFs, the audio file with Corinne's voice labeling me too passive, and the metadata links between my design site and Elaine's retreat. Nina didn't interrupt. She let the silence fill in the weight of what I was saying. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. Would you like me to roll the clip? I nodded again. Corinne's voice filled the studio. Jenna's sweet, but she was never built for leadership. Elaine, now she understands presence. Then Dad, with that familiar lilt of amused condescension. She still makes those little collages, right? Mood boards. Cute. Naina said nothing, but her fingers tightened slightly around her tea mug. We ended the episode there. 3 days later, the episode hit 1 million downloads. The comments flooded in, not the quiet one. Design stolen, family fraud. People dug up old interviews, photos, villa walkthroughs. One user posted screenshots showing the transfer of villa ownership dates compared to Elaine's graduation timeline. I didn't say a word online. I didn't comment or repost or hit like. I went grocery shopping. I made soup. I cleaned my closet. Then came the newsletter from the HOA. Buried between an update about pool repairs and a notice about trash pickup delays, a paragraph appeared. We urge residents to verify the accuracy of any claims made about sponsorship or real estate inheritance. Community trust depends on clarity, not confusion. No names, just poison disguised as policy. Later that day, a post appeared on the Walker family Facebook page, authored jointly by Corinne and Elaine. We are saddened by recent attempts to twist blessings into blame. Our family has always been guided by love, and we will continue to rise above. There were photos. Elaine with a charity check, Corinne holding a coffee mug labeled Warksansa Mom Boss. Still, I said nothing, until the day of the hearing. The Real Estate Ethics Board was housed in a low-rise office building off a side road in Columbia. The waiting area smelled like copier paper and burnt coffee. I wore a navy blazer and flats. My hair was pulled back in a low twist. Bernard met me outside. "You ready?" he asked. "I am," I said, and I meant it. Inside, the conference room was lined with faded portraits of past board members. 5 people sat on one side of a long oak table. On the other side sat Elaine, Corinne, and Russell. They looked smaller in person than in memory. Elaine's lips were tight. Her fingers clenched around her phone. Corinne wore a cream blouse with a pearl brooch. Russell tapped a pen against his legal pad but said nothing. Bernard stood calmly. "We're here to present evidence regarding the contested transfer of a residential property known as the Hilton Head Villa," he said. He walked the panel through the deed trail, initial registration under my name in 2016, the temporary transfer, the lack of compensation, and the silent erasure. He showed timestamps, emails, messages. Then he opened the audio file. The room filled with Corinne's voice. Elaine was always the one. Jenna's just artistic. No one spoke. One board member removed her glasses. Another shifted in his chair. Elaine looked down. Corinne exhaled through her nose. Russell's pen stopped moving. Bernard closed his binder and sat. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The panel thanked us and said they would deliberate privately. We walked out in silence. 3 days later, a certified envelope arrived at my Asheville home. I waited until the kettle finished boiling before opening it. Due to procedural irregularities, lack of verified consent, and misuse of previously registered corporate identity, the property in question is hereby frozen under arbitration pending reassignment. No access, sale, or representation is permitted until resolution. It didn't say I won, but it no longer said I didn't belong. They thought silence was weakness, but silence isn't empty. It's full of decisions. I unlocked the door to the Hilton Head Villa on a Sunday morning in April. The salt air hit me first, carried in by the ocean just beyond the dunes. It was softer than I remembered, less glamorous, more lived in. The paint near the front molding had started to chip. The hydrangeas in the garden were overgrown, leaning toward the sunlight like they'd been waiting for someone to notice. I moved through the rooms quietly, not with reverence, but with resolve. This wasn't a victory lap. I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to claim space. The champagne flutes from Elaine's last retreat were still stacked in the kitchen cabinet, some cloudy with dried bubbles. On the island sat a box filled with printed hashtags, flyers, and folded napkins that read, "Manifest the life you deserve." The irony didn't sting anymore. It just felt irrelevant. In the back bedroom, the one with the view of the water, I opened a drawer and found a framed quote printed on soft pink cardstock. "Don't wait for a seat at the table. Build your own." I smiled at that one, not bitterly, just briefly. Then I turned the frame over and left it face down. On the drive back to Asheville, I passed a small scholarship office tucked between a laundromat and a bike repair shop. I pulled over, walked inside, and asked for the form to make an anonymous donation. "Any particular program?" the woman asked, her voice warm. "First-gen college girls," I said. "Creative fields, anything that doesn't come with a safety net." She nodded, handed me a clipboard. I filled it out under my LLC's name, Tide Nest Holdings. No press release, no signature. That night, I returned to my condo, my real home. It smelled like lemon balm and cedar, and the soft thrum of wind outside felt like reassurance. The air was still, not silent in the hollow way, silent in the way a library holds stories no one can take from you. There was one new email waiting for me when I opened my laptop, from Elaine Walker. Subject, about the villa body. "Given everything going on, would you consider letting us stay there just for a few weeks until things settle? We'd keep it quiet. We're family." No apology, no acknowledgement, just a request, softened with entitlement. I stared at the screen. Then I typed my response. "It's already been promised to someone who saw me first." I hit send and closed the tab. Later, after dinner, I pulled out my old scrapbook. It was the one I kept tucked between cookbooks in the kitchen, thin, quiet, personal. I flipped past pages filled with receipts from design expos, torn pages from magazines, a napkin with a sketch of a branding logo I never pitched. Toward the back, I found the lottery ticket. It had yellowed slightly along the edges. I taped it in gently. Beside it, I slid in a Polaroid I'd taken of my Asheville condo the day I moved in. Bare windows, sunlit walls, one plant in the corner bending toward the light. Underneath both, I wrote in ink, "I never boarded, but I still took off." I closed the book. No announcement followed, no dramatic call, no ripple through the family tree. Just quiet, peaceful, complete. I brewed a cup of herbal tea and took it to the window. The neighborhood was still. A neighbor's wind chime flicked once, then settled. My phone lay face down on the counter. No notifications, no questions, no demands. Just the sound of my life. Finally mine. Sometimes the quietest moments speak the loudest. Sitting by that window with no notifications and no need to explain myself, I realized peace doesn't always come from being heard. It comes from finally hearing yourself. In life, some doors close not with a slam, but with a whisper. And that's enough. Family isn't defined by who claps for you at the table, but who sees you when no one else is watching. We all deserve to choose ourselves without shame, and sometimes letting go is the most loving thing we can do. If this story reminded you of a time you had to reclaim your voice, I'd love to hear how you did it. Feel free to share your thoughts or stay for more stories where silence leads to strength.